What if I told you that karma is not some mysterious cosmic punishment waiting to strike people at random, but a quiet force already shaping your life every single day? Most people imagine karma as revenge from the universe, something dramatic and delayed, but the Stoics saw it very differently. They believed karma wasn't about luck, fate, or payback. It was about cause and effect, playing out inside your character. Every thought you repeat, every excuse you accept, every action you take is slowly training you into someone stronger or weaker, freer or more trapped. Karma, from a Stoic point of view, isn't something that happens to you later. It's something you become. The Stoics understood that life responds to who you are, not what you wish for. If you act with bitterness, suspicion, and resentment, you don't need the universe to punish you. Those traits already poison your decisions, your relationships, and your peace of mind. In simple terms, karma is the bill coming due for the habits you practice daily. If you practice avoidance, your life fills with unfinished business. If you practice discipline, your life gains stability. This isn't mystical, it's mechanical. Just like touching fire burns your hand, living with poor judgment burns your future. The Stoics didn't call this karma, but they lived as if it were always watching, because consequences never stop paying attention. One of the most misunderstood ideas about karma is the belief that bad people always suffer and good people always win. The Stoics rejected this completely. They saw that unfair things happen all the time, and waiting for justice from the outside is a fast way to become bitter. Instead, they focused on inner justice, the idea that your real reward or punishment is the type of person you become. A dishonest person may look successful on the surface, but they live in constant fear of exposure. A cruel person may feel powerful, but they shrink their own capacity for trust and connection. The Stoics saw this as karma in real time. Character shaping destiny quietly, relentlessly, without drama. From a Stoic perspective, karma also shows up in how you respond, not just what you do. Two people can experience the same setback, loss, betrayal, failure, and end up in completely different places. One grows wiser, calmer, more grounded. The other becomes angry, defensive, and stuck. The event didn't decide their future. Their response did. This is where Stoic karma becomes empowering. You are not doomed by what happens to you. You are shaped by how you interpret it and what habits you build afterward. Over time, those interpretations harden into identity, and identity dictates outcomes. The Stoics believed that life is constantly giving feedback, but most people are too distracted or emotional to hear it. When the same problems keep repeating, broken relationships, financial stress, constant frustration, it's not bad luck following you. It's unexamined behavior looping back around. Karma, in this sense, is repetition. What you don't correct, you relive. What you don't learn, life keeps teaching in harsher ways. The Stoic doesn't complain about this. They listen. They ask, what is this situation revealing about my thinking, my expectations, my self-control? That question alone breaks many cycles. Another powerful Stoic idea is that karma doesn't care about your intentions, only your actions. You may mean well, but if you act carelessly, the outcome is still damage. You may believe you're justified, but if your behavior is driven by ego or impulse, the cost still arrives. The Stoics taught radical responsibility here. They believed freedom comes from owning your role in every outcome you can influence. Not blaming others, not blaming fate, not blaming the past. Just clean ownership. This mindset alone transforms karma from something feared into something usable, a tool instead of a threat. The Stoics also understood that delayed karma is the most dangerous kind because it fools people into thinking they've gotten away with something. A person may lie, cut corners, or betray trust and see no immediate consequence. But slowly, invisibly, they lose self-respect. Their standards drop, their integrity weakens. Over time, they require more lies to support the first one. This is Stoic karma at its core, small compromises creating large internal decay. Meanwhile, the disciplined person often feels no immediate reward either, but they are building a foundation that eventually supports them when life becomes heavy. At its deepest level, Stoic karma is about alignment. When your values, actions, and thoughts move in the same direction, life becomes simpler. Not easier, but clearer. When they don't align, life becomes chaotic, confusing, and exhausting. The Stoics believed the universe doesn't need to punish you for living poorly. Disorder is the punishment, clarity is the reward, and both are earned daily, quietly, through choices so small most people dismiss them. The Stoics also believed that karma is deeply tied to self-control, especially in moments when no one is watching. How you behave when there is no applause, no punishment, and no audience is where your future is quietly decided. If you consistently choose comfort over discipline, the cost shows up later as regret, weakness, and dependence. If you choose restraint over impulse, the reward shows up as confidence, stability, and inner calm. This is why Stoics emphasized mastery over the self more than mastery over circumstances. They knew that once your inner world becomes disordered, your outer world eventually follows. Karma, in this sense, is simply the echo of private choices made public over time. Another overlooked aspect of Stoic karma is emotional responsibility. The Stoics didn't believe emotions were bad, but they believed unchecked emotions create predictable suffering. If you feed anger, it sharpens into bitterness. If you feed envy, it turns into resentment. If you feed fear, it slowly shrinks your world. People often ask why the same emotional pain keeps finding them, and the Stoic answer is uncomfortable but freeing, because the same emotional habits are still running the show. Karma doesn't chase you, it mirrors you. Change the pattern, and the reflection changes with it. The Stoics also warned against outsourcing your peace to outcomes. When your happiness depends on things going your way, karma becomes cruel because life is unpredictable. You win sometimes, you lose sometimes, and your emotional state swings wildly in response. Stoicism flips this completely. It teaches that peace comes from focusing on what you control, your effort, your judgment, your character, and releasing obsession over results. From this view, karma rewards consistency, not outcomes. You can do everything right and still fail, but you walk away stronger instead of broken. That strength compounds, and eventually, it changes the quality of opportunities that come your way. There is also a social dimension to Stoic karma that most people miss. How you treat others quietly trains them how to treat you. If you constantly tolerate disrespect, people learn that your boundaries are flexible. If you consistently act with fairness and firmness, people learn where the line is. Over time, you don't just experience better relationships, you attract them. This isn't manipulation or positivity thinking. It's behavioral economics applied to human interaction. Your standards create your environment. Lower standards invite chaos. Higher standards filter it out. The Stoics were especially critical of the belief that karma should work on your timeline. They understood that impatience creates despair. When people don't see immediate payoff for doing the right thing, they often abandon it. Stoicism teaches endurance instead. You don't live correctly because it pays fast. You live correctly because it compounds. Just like poor habits compound into crisis, disciplined habits compound into stability. Karma moves slowly, but it is thorough. It never forgets patterns, even when people do. At a deeper level, Stoic karma is about identity reinforcement. Every action you take casts a vote for the type of person you are becoming. Lie once, and lying becomes easier. Show courage once, and courage becomes more accessible next time. Over months and years, these votes shape your default reactions. Eventually, you don't have to force discipline or integrity. It becomes who you are. At that point, life feels less hostile, not because it changed, but because you did. The Stoics also believed that resisting reality creates negative karma faster than almost anything else. When you argue with what has already happened, you waste energy, delay healing, and make poor decisions. Acceptance, in Stoic terms, isn't giving up. It's removing friction. Once you stop fighting reality, you regain the power to respond wisely. Many people suffer not because of events, but because they demand the past be different. Karma here is simple. Resistance multiplies pain. Acceptance reduces it. Finally, the Stoic view of karma teaches that nothing is neutral. Every thought you rehearse, every excuse you repeat, every standard you lower is shaping your future experience. Life is not keeping score with morality. It's keeping score with patterns. And patterns, once established, are hard to break unless you become aware of them. The Stoics believed awareness was the first act of freedom, because once you see the pattern, you can interrupt it. And once you interrupt it consistently, karma begins to work for you instead of against you. The Stoics also understood that many people misunderstand karma because they confuse pain with punishment. Not all pain is karma for wrongdoing. Sometimes pain is training. When you begin disciplining yourself, you feel discomfort. When you stop chasing approval, you feel loneliness. When you raise your standards, you lose people who were comfortable with your old version. None of this is punishment. It is the friction of growth. From a Stoic point of view, karma is not about avoiding pain. It's about understanding which pain is destructive and which pain is strengthening you. The pain of poor habits weakens you. The pain of self-control builds you. There's also a powerful Stoic idea that karma operates internally before it shows externally. A person who constantly complains slowly rewires their mind to search for problems. A person who constantly practices gratitude rewires their mind to search for solutions. Over time, both individuals genuinely believe life treats them differently. In reality, their focus trained their perception, and perception influenced their decisions. Decisions shaped results. This is not mystical. It's psychological momentum. You become what you repeatedly focus on, and your outcomes begin to mirror that focus. The Stoics warned that blaming external forces is one of the fastest ways to create negative karma. When you blame luck, your upbringing, your ex-partner, your boss, or society for everything, you give away your ability to improve. The more you repeat that story, the more powerless you feel. Powerlessness leads to inaction. Inaction leads to stagnation. Stagnation leads to frustration, and the cycle tightens. Stoicism breaks this loop by narrowing your focus to one simple question. What part of this is within my control right now? That question alone shifts karma from something happening to you into something you are actively shaping. Another overlooked dimension of Stoic karma is delayed gratification. Most people sabotage their future because they cannot tolerate temporary discomfort. They overspend for immediate pleasure, avoid difficult conversations, skip discipline today for comfort. In the moment, it feels harmless. But each small choice creates a ripple. Months later, the credit card bill arrives. The relationship deteriorates. The opportunity disappears because preparation never happened. Karma doesn't need to strike dramatically. It simply lets time expose your habits. The Stoic lives differently. They accept short-term discomfort as the price of long-term peace. The Stoics also believed that your reputation is a form of karma, but not in the shallow way people think. It's not about popularity, it's about predictability. When you are consistent, calm, and fair, people trust you. Trust opens doors. When you are reactive, unreliable, and impulsive, people hesitate around you. That hesitation quietly limits your opportunities. You may never see the chances you lost because someone decided you were too unstable. This is how karma works socially. Your behavior builds or blocks invisible bridges long before you realize it. There is also the internal consequence of living against your own values. The Stoics believed that inner conflict is one of the heaviest forms of suffering. When your actions contradict what you know is right, your mind becomes restless. You feel tension you can't explain. You become defensive when confronted. That unrest is not random anxiety, it's misalignment. And misalignment, over time, erodes confidence. When you live in alignment with your values, even difficult days feel cleaner. You may struggle, but you don't feel divided inside. That inner unity becomes a quiet strength that carries you through chaos. Stoic karma also teaches that comparison is a dangerous distraction. When you constantly measure your life against others, you distort your own path. You chase what looks impressive instead of what is meaningful. Eventually, you wake up living someone else's priorities. The consequence isn't dramatic failure, it's emptiness. The Stoics advised focusing only on your own progress. Your only competition is your previous self. When you live that way, karma becomes simple. Improve daily, and your life improves gradually. Perhaps the most empowering Stoic lesson about karma is that it is never too late to change its direction. Patterns may be strong, but they are not permanent. The moment you change your behavior consistently, the trajectory shifts. It may not feel immediate. In fact, at first, it often feels worse because you are breaking familiar cycles. But over time, the new pattern builds momentum. The Stoics believe transformation isn't loud, it's steady. It's the daily refusal to repeat yesterday's mistakes. And eventually, what once felt like bad karma begins to feel like earned stability. And in the quietest sense, Stoic karma is about self-respect. When you act with integrity, even in small moments, you strengthen your relationship with yourself. That relationship determines your confidence, your standards, and your tolerance for nonsense. When you betray your own standards repeatedly, you weaken that relationship. You second-guess yourself. You doubt your discipline. You lower your expectations. Karma here is deeply personal. It's not about cosmic justice. It's about the quiet agreement you keep or break with yourself every single day. The Stoics would say that when you hurt people, whether in relationships, at work, or even brief encounters with strangers, you are not escaping consequences just because nothing dramatic happens right away. The first consequence is internal. Each time you knowingly harm someone, you train yourself to justify behavior you would not tolerate if it were done to you. That justification hardens your character. Over time, empathy dulls, conscience quiets, and what once felt wrong begins to feel normal. This is Stoic karma at work. You don't become cruel overnight. You become comfortable with cruelty in small steps. And that comfort reshapes who you are long before it reshapes your circumstances. When someone uses people for money, status, or convenience, the Stoics would say the damage runs deeper than the transaction itself. You begin to see people not as human beings, but as tools. Once that mindset forms, trust becomes impossible, both given and received. You start assuming others are also using you, because you've trained your mind to see relationships as transactions. That suspicion isolates you. Even when good people enter your life, you struggle to believe in their intentions. Karma here isn't revenge, it's erosion. You lose the ability to experience genuine connection because you taught yourself to exploit it. Letting someone fall in love with you while knowing you have no intention of loving them back is another example the Stoics would view as self-inflicted harm. Even if the other person never confronts you, your character absorbs the weight of that deception. You learn to disconnect words from truth, affection from sincerity. Over time, this creates emotional numbness. You may later wonder why love feels shallow or why intimacy doesn't move you the way it once did. The Stoic explanation is simple. You practiced emotional dishonesty, and emotional honesty weakened. Karma shows up as emptiness, not punishment. Being mean just because is something the Stoics saw as a sign of inner disorder. A person at peace does not need to dominate, belittle, or wound others to feel powerful. Cruelty is often a cover for insecurity, and every act of unnecessary meanness reinforces that insecurity. You might feel a brief sense of control, but afterward, something tightens inside. You become more defensive, more reactive, quicker to anger. This is karma compounding. The world begins to feel hostile because you trained yourself to be hostile first. In the workplace, harming others for personal gain, taking credit, sabotaging reputations, manipulating outcomes, often looks like success in the short term. The Stoics warned that this kind of behavior carries delayed consequences that are harder to detect. People may smile and comply, but trust quietly disappears. You may rise, but without loyalty beneath you. Eventually, when pressure hits or mistakes happen, there is no goodwill to soften the fall. Stoic karma doesn't need exposure to work. It simply removes support when you need it most. The Stoics also believed that mistreating strangers matters more than people think. How you treat those who cannot benefit you reveals your true character. Snapping at a cashier, dismissing someone in need, showing casual disrespect. These moments train your default behavior. Over time, that default spills into your closest relationships. You don't suddenly become harsh with loved ones. You practice harshness everywhere until it reaches them too. Karma here is consistency. Who you are in small moments becomes who you are in important ones. Another subtle consequence the Stoics recognized is that harming others distorts your self-image. You either begin to see yourself as a bad person and act accordingly, or you construct elaborate stories to excuse your behavior. Both paths create inner tension. Living with that tension drains energy. You feel restless, dissatisfied, always slightly on edge. Many people mistake this for anxiety or boredom, but the Stoic would call it moral fatigue, the cost of repeatedly acting against what you know is right. The Stoics were clear that karma does not require intent to operate. Even if someone convinces themselves that this is just how the world works, the consequences still apply. Using others, misleading them, or causing harm narrows your emotional range. You may gain advantage, but you lose depth. Life becomes flatter, less meaningful. Joy feels muted. Peace feels unreachable. From a Stoic view, this is not fate being cruel. It is character-shaping experience. At the same time, the Stoics would remind you that recognizing this pattern is not a sentence. It's an opening. Awareness interrupts karma's momentum. The moment you see how your actions ripple back into your inner world, you regain choice. You can begin acting differently, not out of fear of punishment, but out of respect for your own mind. Because ultimately, the Stoics believed the heaviest consequences are not what others do to you, but what your actions slowly turn you into. The Stoics would also say that many people underestimate how deeply these actions echo back into their own lives, because karma often shows up as patterns, not events. If you repeatedly hurt people, you eventually find yourself surrounded by guarded, distant, or emotionally unavailable individuals, not because the world is cold, but because your behavior taught others to protect themselves around you. You may start to feel misunderstood or lonely, wondering why no one truly sees or supports you. From a Stoic lens, this isn't abandonment, it's reflection. The way you treat others becomes the emotional climate you live in. Life doesn't need to confront you directly. It simply mirrors your energy back in human form. There is also a psychological toll that comes from knowingly crossing moral lines. The Stoics believed that inner peace comes from coherence, your thoughts, values, and actions moving together. When you consistently act in ways that violate your own standards, that coherence breaks. You begin to rationalize, minimize, or distract yourself to avoid self-confrontation. Over time, this creates mental noise. You feel unsettled even when things are going well. This restlessness pushes many people toward excess, more money, more validation, more control, trying to silence a discomfort that only integrity can resolve. Stoic karma here is quiet but relentless. Inner chaos follows moral compromise. Another way karma shows up is through emotional resilience. When you treat people poorly, you weaken your ability to handle pain later in life. The Stoics believed compassion, fairness, and restraint build inner strength. Cruelty and manipulation do the opposite. They make you fragile. Why? Because you train yourself to avoid accountability. When life eventually challenges you, and it always does, you lack the internal structure to stand calmly. You panic, lash out, or collapse. People often wonder why they can't handle stress like they used to. And the Stoic answer is simple. Strength was never built because character was being traded for convenience. The Stoics also emphasized that harming others damages your sense of meaning. A life centered on using people, winning at all costs, or avoiding responsibility may feel exciting for a while, but it slowly empties out. Achievements stop satisfying you. Relationships feel shallow. Even pleasure loses its depth. This is because meaning comes from contribution, not extraction. When your life revolves around taking, attention, affection, advantage, you starve the part of yourself that needs purpose. Karma here isn't loss, it's hollowness. You get what you wanted, but it doesn't feel like anything. What makes Stoic karma especially powerful is that it operates whether you believe in it or not. You don't need faith in the universe or fear of judgment. All you need is time. Time exposes habits. Time magnifies patterns. Time reveals who you've been practicing being. This is why the Stoics urged people to live as if their character were always under construction, because it is. Every interaction, no matter how small, is shaping the structure of your future self. And this is where responsibility becomes freedom. The Stoics didn't teach this perspective to shame people. They taught it to empower them. If your actions are shaping your experience, then you are not helpless. You can change direction at any moment. You can choose fairness over manipulation, honesty over convenience, kindness over ego, not because you're trying to earn cosmic points, but because you understand that your inner state is your true home, and you are the one furnishing it. If this perspective is resonating with you, if you're starting to see how character, choices, and consequences are deeply connected, take a moment to support this channel. Like the video, share it with someone who needs this reminder, and subscribe to Psychovest if you want more clear, grounded insights on Stoicism, self-mastery, and living with intention. What you consistently consume shapes how you think, and how you think shapes how you live. The Stoics would go even further and say that karma also shows up in how safe people feel around you. When you habitually deceive, manipulate, or emotionally exploit others, people may not always confront you, but they sense something is off. Humans are remarkably sensitive to inconsistency. Over time, people share less, trust less, and reveal less of themselves around you. You might notice conversations stay shallow, relationships don't deepen, and connections feel transactional. From a Stoic perspective, this is not coincidence. You trained others to protect their inner world from you, just as you trained yourself to treat intimacy casually. Karma here is distance, not dramatic rejection, quiet, emotional walls. The Stoics also believed that harming others slowly distorts your perception of reality. When you lie or use people, you must constantly track stories, manage impressions, and stay alert for exposure. This keeps your mind tense. You begin interpreting neutral events as threats. Innocent questions feel like accusations. This is why people who live dishonestly often seem anxious, defensive, or irritable. Their nervous system never fully relaxes. Stoic karma is not the universe watching you. It's your own mind becoming a prison built from vigilance and fear. Another consequence the Stoics recognized is the loss of self-trust. Each time you betray someone else, you quietly teach yourself that your word is flexible. Over time, that lesson turns inward. You stop trusting your own promises. You say you'll change, improve, or commit, but something inside you doubts it. Motivation fades quickly because you've broken too many agreements with yourself. People often think discipline is about willpower, but the Stoics knew it's about credibility. When you consistently act with integrity, your mind believes you. When you don't, even good intentions feel hollow. Karma here is self-doubt. The Stoics also warned that people who hurt others often misinterpret their own suffering later in life. When hardship arrives, and it always does, they feel uniquely targeted or unfairly treated. But the Stoic would say this reaction comes from entitlement built over time. If you've lived prioritizing your own advantage, difficulty feels insulting rather than instructional. This mindset blocks growth. Instead of learning, you resist. Instead of adapting, you complain. Karma here is stagnation, suffering without wisdom. They also emphasize that kindness is not weakness because it creates internal stability. When you act with fairness and consideration, you reduce inner conflict. Your mind becomes quieter, decisions become simpler. You don't need to remember lies or defend questionable choices. This clarity compounds into confidence, not arrogance, but calm certainty. Over time, this inner order changes how you move through the world. People respond differently to someone who is settled within themselves. Opportunities appear not because you chased them, but because others sense reliability. From a Stoic view, this is positive karma earned through consistency. The Stoics believed that even when no one ever confronts you, life still records your patterns through consequences you cannot avoid. Your emotional range narrows or expands. Your resilience strengthens or weakens. Your capacity for peace grows or shrinks. These outcomes don't arrive as punishment. They emerge as reality. This is why the Stoics urged people to act well, even when it's inconvenient, unnoticed, or unrewarded. Not because it makes you morally superior, but because it makes you psychologically free. And perhaps the hardest Stoic truth about karma is this: you cannot outsmart it with intelligence or charm. You can convince people. You can delay consequences. You can win short-term advantages, but you cannot escape the shaping effect of your own behavior. You live inside the person your actions are creating. That is the inescapable part. And once you truly understand that, morality stops being about rules and starts being about self-preservation of the highest kind. The Stoics would also say that many people misunderstand why life eventually feels heavy for those who consistently harm others. It's not because the universe decides to even the score, but because living without moral restraint creates a constant background tension. When you know you've wronged people, even if years have passed, those unresolved moments stay lodged in the mind. They surface as intrusive thoughts, sudden guilt, or unexplained irritability. You may distract yourself with work, pleasure, or noise, but silence becomes uncomfortable. Stoic karma here is psychological weight, the mind refusing to forget what the conscience never resolved. Another consequence the Stoics recognized is that harming others weakens your ability to receive help when you truly need it. Life inevitably brings moments of vulnerability, illness, loss, failure, or uncertainty. People who have lived selfishly often find themselves facing these moments alone, not because others are cruel, but because goodwill was never built. Support is not guaranteed, it is cultivated. Stoic karma works quietly in advance, shaping who shows up for you long before you realize you'll need them. The Stoics also warned that people who regularly manipulate emotions or exploit affection lose touch with genuine feeling. At first, emotional distance feels like control. You stay detached, protected, superior. But over time, that detachment spreads. Joy becomes muted. Love feels theoretical rather than lived. Even positive moments fail to land deeply. The Stoic would say this is not emotional strength, it's emotional atrophy. What you do not practice, you lose. Karma here is numbness, not suffering in the dramatic sense, but in the slow fading of vitality. They also understood that cruelty often masquerades as confidence. People who belittle others or act callously may appear strong, but internally they are brittle. Their sense of worth depends on comparison and dominance. When they encounter someone who is calm, grounded, and unaffected by their tactics, they feel exposed. This leads to escalation, more cruelty, more manipulation, to regain control. Stoic karma shows up as instability. The more they try to control others, the less control they have over themselves. Another Stoic insight is that every time you choose integrity, you simplify your future. You reduce the number of explanations you need to make, the stories you need to maintain, the regrets you need to suppress. Life becomes cleaner, decisions become easier. This is why Stoics valued honesty even when it cost them. They understood that short-term loss is often the price of long-term clarity. Karma rewards clarity, because clarity leads to better judgment, and better judgment leads to better outcomes. The Stoics would also say that remorse, when used correctly, can reverse karma's direction. Feeling guilt is not weakness, it's information. It tells you where you've strayed from your values. Ignored guilt hardens into shame or defensiveness. Examined guilt becomes wisdom. The Stoics believed self-reflection was the gateway to transformation. When you take responsibility without self-hatred, you reclaim your agency. From that moment forward, different choices create different patterns. Karma begins to shift because behavior has shifted. They also emphasized that forgiveness, both given and received, is not about erasing consequences. It's about releasing emotional debt. Holding on to resentment keeps you tied to past harm, even if you were the one who caused it. Forgiveness allows you to move forward without dragging old versions of yourself behind you. Stoic karma recognizes this as liberation, not absolution. You still learn, you still change, but you do so without being imprisoned by yesterday. And perhaps the most grounding Stoic truth is this: the quality of your life is inseparable from the quality of your character. Not your image, not your success, not your explanations, your character. Every choice either strengthens it or weakens it. Karma is simply the long shadow cast by that character over time. When you understand this, you stop asking whether life is fair and start asking whether you are living in a way that makes peace possible. The Stoics would also point out that many people who harm others end up trapped in a subtle form of paranoia. When you know you have been dishonest, unfaithful, manipulative, or cruel, you begin to expect the same from others. Trust feels dangerous because you project your own behavior outward. You read hidden motives into neutral actions. You question loyalty even when none has been broken. This creates a lonely mindset where you are always alert, always guarded, always waiting for betrayal. Stoic karma here is suspicion, not because the world became untrustworthy, but because your inner lens was shaped by how you treated people. They also believed that unresolved harm creates unfinished psychological loops. When you wrong someone and never take responsibility, your mind keeps returning to it in indirect ways. You replay conversations. You imagine confrontations. You feel irritation when reminded of that person, even if years have passed. This is not random. The Stoics believed the mind seeks closure, and when it doesn't get it, tension remains. Karma here is mental clutter. Your past actions occupy space in your present awareness, quietly draining attention and peace. Another Stoic insight is that people who consistently act without compassion often mistake loneliness for independence. They tell themselves they don't need anyone, that attachment is weakness, that emotions complicate life. But Stoics knew humans are social by nature. Cutting yourself off emotionally doesn't make you strong. It makes you unsupported. When life demands cooperation, patience, or understanding, you feel overwhelmed. Karma shows up as fragility disguised as self-sufficiency. The Stoics also understood that hurting others damages your ability to be honest with yourself about who you are. Instead of facing uncomfortable truths, you begin curating a self-image. You highlight your strengths, justify your flaws, and dismiss feedback. Growth stops because growth requires humility. Karma here is stagnation. Years pass, but the same patterns repeat because self-examination was avoided. Life feels repetitive, not because nothing changes, but because you didn't. They also warned that power gained through manipulation is unstable. When you rely on charm, leverage, or deception, you must constantly maintain control. This creates pressure. One mistake, one honest person, one unexpected event can unravel everything. Stoic karma shows up as anxiety tied to maintaining appearances. In contrast, power built on integrity is calm. It doesn't require performance, it rests on consistency. The Stoics preferred the second kind because it allowed the mind to rest. Another quiet consequence the Stoics recognized is that when you repeatedly choose selfishness, you weaken your sense of gratitude. Nothing ever feels like enough. Wins feel temporary. Pleasure fades quickly. You always want more because contentment never learned how to stay. Karma here is dissatisfaction, not because life is lacking, but because appreciation was never practiced. They also believed that the longer someone avoids accountability, the harsher accountability eventually feels. Small corrections ignored become large disruptions later. Minor character flaws, unaddressed, turn into life-altering consequences. This is why Stoics emphasized daily reflection. They believed reviewing your actions each night, what you did well, what you did poorly, what you would correct, kept karma small and manageable. Avoidance lets it accumulate. And perhaps one of the most sobering Stoic observations is that harming others slowly shrinks your future options. You may not see the doors that quietly close, the invitations that never come, the opportunities that pass you by because someone remembered how you treated them or how you made them feel. Karma here is subtraction, not dramatic loss, but a narrowing life. The Stoics believed that none of this makes a person beyond repair, but they were clear about one thing. Life becomes easier when you stop working against your own conscience. When your actions no longer create inner resistance, energy returns, focus sharpens, peace becomes possible, not because the world softened, but because you stopped creating unnecessary friction within yourself. The Stoic understanding of karma ultimately brings everything back to one unavoidable truth. You live inside the consequences of your own character. Not someday, not after the universe intervenes, right now. Every choice you make is quietly shaping the mind you wake up with, the peace you're able to feel, and the kind of life that unfolds around you. When you harm others through manipulation, cruelty, deception, or emotional exploitation, you don't escape unscathed. You carry it forward as tension, distrust, numbness, instability, and inner conflict. And when you act with integrity, especially when it costs you, you build something far more valuable than approval or advantage. You build inner order. You build self-respect. You build a mind that can rest. The Stoics knew that the real reward of living well is not external success, but inner freedom. A person who is at peace with themselves cannot be easily shaken, threatened, or controlled. That is karma in its most practical form, becoming someone you don't have to run from. If this perspective gave you clarity, if it challenged you to reflect honestly on your own patterns, then support the growth of this channel. Like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Psychovest for more grounded, no-nonsense insights on Stoicism, self-mastery, and building a stronger inner life. The ideas you return to shape who you become, and choosing better ideas is the first act of real change.